So much for the introduction. Sorry, I will have to speak in English with an Argentinian accent, so I'll try to go slower. But I'm very happy to be here. I'm absolutely ecstatic to have a full house to talk about precisely this, to talk about women entrepreneurs and women, especially social entrepreneurs. I put a title that is a little provocative, is Will Women Lead the Social Entrepreneurship Revolution? The numbers are not in our favor. We're still extremely underrepresented, even in social entrepreneurship. We are not even making 30%. And for what I found in Ukraine, even less. No? So the idea is to first see what is social entrepreneurship and talk a little bit with you about will you lead the social entrepreneurship revolution? Are you ready to step into this arena, this area? So I'll tell you a little bit about my personal motivation first. Then I'll explain to you a little bit what is this about social entrepreneurship. Talking to people here in Ukraine, it was quite interesting, different than in other countries, because many times when you talk about social justice or equality, it's very tied up to the past and to Soviet ideas, and it's very difficult to break some preconceptions and cultural things. So the idea is to try to innovate and to try to see social and environmental issues in a different way. And why women? I will ask you because I don't have an answer. So, and we'll talk about certain components that the literature and entrepreneurs that I work with show that make social entrepreneurs successful. I will try to share with you some cases to inspire you or to see what other women do. And then we'll open questions. I will try to make it interactive. It's not that I'm going to talk all that first and then, so we're going to try to talk together. So the first thing that I would like is to introduce myself. But at the same time, while I'm doing this, I want you to think about yourself and even write a couple of things about how would you introduce yourself, what groups do you belong, what things represent you, what things you care about, etc. So my name is Vanina Farber. I'm Argentinian, originally Argentinian. I'm an economist. I did an MBA and a PhD in economics, but I did my undergrad in political science. I am an MBA professor. I teach economic environment and country analysis. I actually teach macroeconomics. And I'm a proud mother of twins. I have 2 girls. My 2 girls are turning 13, so this proudness may disappear in a couple of years. I'm also a researcher. I do research on social entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship in general. I look at intention. I look at if there is a difference between commercial entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs and managers, if there are different traits of personalities or things that make you different. I'm a mentor to entrepreneurs. I like to teach these things, but I also like to work with entrepreneurs to get my hands dirty, especially on issues of measuring impact and more the business side of the social entrepreneurship. And I'm a wife, and that was one of the best choices I actually made, and what allows me to be here with my girls in Geneva. We have 2 parents in a household, so we share all the duties and the things we do. I'm a consultant for multilateral agencies. I work with the UN, I work with UNCTAD in the entrepreneurship program, I work with different multilateral organizations when I thought that you needed to work in an international organization to change the world. After that, I went to CSR, I worked with companies, then I went to the university. I'll probably be teaching kindergarten next year with this idea of trying to find the right audience. But I'm also a firm believer in blended education. I think the world is really small and you don't need to do all presential. I believe in breaking the silos and the rooms of the classrooms, and I teach in the blended programs at IE Business School in the Global Executive MBA and Global MBA. I'm a political science. I did political science in Argentina in my undergrad. So for my friends in political science, I'm a trader because I did economics afterwards, and I believe in measuring things and econometrics. And then for my Economist friends, I'm a traitor too because I believe in culture and institutions and purpose. So I move in this world of social entrepreneurship where I finally found a place where I can combine both things. My business-oriented mind with the idea of having a purpose and an impact. And it's the place where I really feel comfortable. And I'm also a very purpose-driven person. Many of the things I do, I strive for impact. I don't know if I get it right, but at least I try to have a positive impact with the people that I get around. So try to think about yourself, even write 2 or 3, because we're going to do a little exercise. The other thing that I wanted to think about is think about 2 or 3 problems. They don't need to be lifestyle problems, even things that bother you in the last 2 weeks, things that, I don't know, traffic to get here, or could be something when you watch TV that you felt bad, or something you commented with friends, anything, and think about 2 or 3 problems that you felt that happened at least to you in the last 2 weeks. I'll give you 2 minutes just to write them down. Write 2 or 3, and we're going to come back to that. I will ask you what are those problems. So think a little bit about that. Good. So what is social entrepreneurship? Can somebody, I'll go back, but can somebody tell me what you think is social entrepreneurship? Even if you don't know, there are 2 words, social entrepreneurship. Yes?
An entrepreneurship with social impact.
An entrepreneur with social impact. Oh. And what is social impact?
Social impact is the impact which basically the result of your work which influence somebody else's life, with maybe one person or some other people.
Great. Anybody else that wants to add something?
Помощь другим людям.
Sorry, I'm going to get my...
Help to other people.
Help to other people. Help to other people. Okay. Yeah, that's easier actually, you know. Help to other people. Yes. Could be an environment, could be, but it's true that your main mission or your goal is sometimes not just making money, has to be with a social goal or social impact or with other people. Anything else?
Be a volunteer.
To be a volunteer. Okay, we'll see if it is to be a volunteer. What do you mean by being a volunteer?
As he told, like to help other people, to give people, not just to consume, but
not just to consume, but to give. Okay, good. Yes.
political situation in east of Ukraine.
The political situation of the east of Ukraine, for example, can be a motivator. There's actually, I found that, I was looking at entrepreneurs, but these are men, so you don't have it here. 2 guys that actually programmed a game to learn English, and the game includes values of pride, of freedom, and forgiveness, and values of how to deal with difficult times. So while you're learning English and you are playing a game for kids, includes also values on how to cope in difficult situations. And they were actually inspired because of what is happening right now. So the idea is to use a business in order to pursue a social goal. So when we talk about social entrepreneurship, these are businesses. These are not NGOs or volunteers. No, people can volunteer their time too, but the businesses, so these are businesses where their main objective is to solve a social problem or an environmental problem or a social ill, if you want. So actually, if this business is extremely successful, it will go bankrupt. Why? Because the problem will disappear. So if I want to fight poverty and there's no poverty in the world, I don't have a business anymore. Sadly, we're so far off that we don't even need to worry. Most of the problems are extremely large and will stay here for quite a long time. So the objective is actually to confront social problems with market solutions. You can have not-for-profit companies, you can have for-profit companies, you can have hybrid companies that mix both. I'm more interested in the for-profit companies. So businesses and business owners that make money by solving social problems without exploiting anybody, without abusing the environment, but that actually use market tools to solve the problem, but at the same time make money. So what's the promise? And the big promise precisely is that businesses can transform reality. If we're going to work for the UN or wait for the UN to change things, or if we're going to wait for the government to change things, we're going to stay here forever. So I really think that businesses have a very important role to transform society, to innovate, and to actually solve the problems, especially in the environment where they operate. You don't need to go to Africa to solve problems. You have enough in Ukraine to actually motivate yourself. But if other countries motivate you, good, go for it. So the real challenge and why social entrepreneurs are actually incredibly interesting people is because they have to match up both things. They have to be good business people and make money and make profits and be sustainable on the economic side, but at the same time they need to have impact. And when they grow or scale up, a lot of companies, in order to grow, they decrease costs, so low margin and large scale. The problem is when you do social, sometimes if you decrease cost, you lose impact. So you could do that, but the idea is that the growing should increase your impact and should multiply your impact. And that's extremely difficult for social entrepreneurs. Some companies are very good when they're small, and when they start growing, they get very complicated. So the challenge is to do both, is to grow and be sustainable and make money and multiply impact. Because in order to solve the problem, actually you need to grow. If you stay just with 5 customers, 10 or even 100 customers, that's not going to solve many of the problems. So you need to be long-term oriented, and you need to be oriented to a mindset for growth. In many of the cases, what you need is social innovation. We're going to talk and we're going to see examples, but the idea or the definition of social innovation is to find a novel solution to a problem. What happens? Social entrepreneurship questions precisely the business as usual. We're used to deal with poverty with charity, or we're used to think this problem not as opportunity for business. We're used to feel pity or empathy, but we don't see a lot of cases face to face to these problems. So the idea is to find new ways of understanding the reality that is around us. So what do you need to be a social entrepreneur? Why I put a title like this, Will Women Lead the Social Entrepreneurship Revolution? Do you think that women have something different? That this can be answered by our male friends in the audience too. Do you think women have something special or different to become leaders in this area? Is that by nature?
Yes, I think so. Because we are mothers.
Okay, we're mothers, and by nature we care about. So what do you all think? Do you agree? Do you think something else?
There is a notion that men are born to be or to please themselves, you know? Women are born just to please others.
Do you agree with that?
That's not my notion.
Let me check your shoes. No, I'm trying to check, because we women buy crazy shoes sometimes to please ourselves and clothes too. No, but I'm just kidding. But do you agree with that? We are born to please other people, so we're going to be better at social because it's related to others, as you well mentioned.
This is the social upbringing.
Do you know, that could be social upbringing. So one, you say, is nature. Another could be when you're a kid, your mom or dad, when you're a boy, says, go play, be a man, tough, don't cry, and say, go take care of a little brother, cook, don't get your dress dirty, don't be careful, don't go to that tree, you're going to get hurt. And boys, you have to run, do faster, you're a sissy, you're I don't know what. It could be social norms, could be culture. Do you know, I'm Argentinian, do you know Cristina Kirchner? Did you hear about her? Do you know Margaret Thatcher?
Yeah.
very caring women, big heart, care about others. Is that the case? Not necessarily. Most of the time when we talk about women, what we really want is just equality, you know? We want to be as bad as men. We can run a business even if we're mediocre. We can be president even if we're mediocre. We see a lot of mediocre presidents these days. And they're very confident anyway. Many times we need to justify to be better than others to do things. But it's true, as you were saying, and some of the cases, some people believe that women are natural carers because they're mothers, because some think, okay, there's nothing that is an instinct, but it's learned, it's this position that we use in society. And others actually think that social entrepreneurship is actually good for women, and as the person that presented me before said, is you can choose to be a mother and to have a job, and you try to do both at the same time, and you try to balance out. And sometimes corporate businesses, commercial businesses, really there's a glass ceiling, there's some discrimination. In a lot of cases you have meetings at 9 p.m. at night. If you try to leave to see your kids, they look at you like you're not very committed. So the culture of certain businesses, it has made that many women say, maybe that's not the kind of business that I want. So I want to create a different culture, a different type of business. So being nature, being social rules, or being barriers in commercial areas, it is true that a lot of attributes that are associated with women are an asset in the social entrepreneurship arena. Being a good communicator, being empathic, caring about others. Sometimes if you are going to be a CFO of a big bank and you're terribly empathic and that's not good, you need to be tough. So a lot of these attributes, and again, I don't believe women have them only, because there are more social entrepreneurs that are men than women, so a lot of men have these too. But it's true that have been associated with women. And in other areas where this was something bad that we had to hide, that we had to control, here is something that can make us successful, that we can actually use, that it is an asset. So first thing you need is a heart. Sorry, microphone. I move my hands a lot, excuse me. So even online, when I do video conference online. So I move my heart. First thing you need is a heart. Second thing you need is what? Brains. You cannot run a business if you do not know strategy, accounting, financial skills, sales, branding, and a lot of non-market environment. It's not enough to know all the business stuff. You also need to know how to deal with NGOs, how to deal with the government, how to work with other groups, how to change legislation, because a lot of the markets you're going to work do not exist. A lot of the markets where you're going to have to create them or change barriers. So you're going to need a lot of different skills in order to run the successful business. And you're going to need specific assets. If you want to work on clean energy, or you want to create a dry toilet, or you want to create alternative energy or sewer system, you better be an engineer. If I would love to do that, I'm an economist and political scientist. You cannot create anything. So hopefully ideas, but I'm not even sure about that one. So if you are going to work on biomedical school, again, you need certain skills. So you are going to need very clear specific assets or specific skills depending on the problem you want to solve. So you need heart, you need brain. What else do you think you need? Money? You need money, and we're going to talk about money in a minute. So here is money. Sources of financing. You see, we have the guy on the table. But it's true. A lot of these things you are going to have on the specific assets, on the brains, how to get financing. Most social entrepreneurs start with bootstrapping and asking family and friends. If you know a social entrepreneur, how many times that person asks you for money? I finance quite a few friends. that might not be my friends very soon, but no, I still love them. But it's true that at the beginning, usually they'll pool resources wherever they can. And most of the time, even to get larger type of financing, the financing institutions, the angel investors, the impact investors, want to see that they actually use all the resources available. They really like to see that you mortgage your mother's house, so you're going to be very concerned of not losing that house first, not that do not care about money. You also have small business grants and money. Most public organizations, in general the government, will have grants and very specific to women. And I've seen lots of things here in the Ukraine, actually by cooperation. I've seen Danish grants, US grants. There are really different places that have grants for women starting businesses. You have incubators, private, at universities that are working. Obviously, it's usually little money. They have contests and awards, and it's from 5,000 to 20,000, not really dollars. Not something that is going to change the world, but at least to get you started or prototyping an idea. And then you have angel investors. Angel investors go from 20,000 to 250. And there we still have kind of 30% of women and 70% of men getting the funding. And that's good stuff. That's what I'm... When we get to venture capital, that is the big money, we make 5%. Women drop immediately. We really get a lot less access to financing. And then partnership with large companies, when you are going to sell them or be part of their value chain, that's another possibility. Let me show you something. I don't want to depress you. I will try to get better information later. But this is an experiment or a paper that was just published now in 2017, even though the data by Harvard Business Review. They actually went to venture capitalists in Sweden. What do you know about Sweden and gender equality? They're really good. It's one of the countries that we know women are everywhere, have great maternity leave, protection of rights, great education, there are CEOs, CFOs, representation, legislation. Okay, let me tell you this story. These are venture capitalists from the public sector, not even private, public sector, that were evaluating who they were going to fund. And they recorded what they were saying in the discussion. So when somebody pitched their idea, and then they were discussing afterwards about if they were going to give them the money or not. And oops, what did I do? There it is. Okay, I thought it was I was going to point out. When they describe a man, they said young and promising. When they describe a woman, they said young and inexperienced. The same thing that doesn't have experience but is promising, the other one was inexperienced. When they described a man, they said cautious, sensible, level-headed. When they described the women, was too cautious, does not dare. So we do have sometimes a bias, and this is in Sweden, my dear people, not in Ukraine or Argentina. So sometimes we have a bias of how we perceive things. Very competent innovator already has money to play with, has money and is using it to play with. When they talk about women, good looking and careless with money. No, money to play with, careless with money. So, and obviously, physical appearance comment that is very strange to get it when you talk about men. So even in those cases, you have an unconscious bias, and the guys that did this, when they read this part, they couldn't even believe it, so they started training and a lot of things about unconscious bias, but these things somehow happen. Did you see this story on the news? These were two American women that created a platform to trade and sell art. And they were not getting any funding. They were not passing to the next, even though they have a lot of clients. So they invented a male partner named Keith. And they got money and grew. And actually, after a year, they told the truth because this Keith, poor thing, was not going to any of the meetings. But nobody cared because they knew Usually when we're in partnerships, we tend to work harder or to go more stuff. But really, after 1 year, people found out that these kids didn't exist. But just having that name helped them to get more money. So you need money, you need courage, you need heart, you need brains in order to get money, sometimes to lie. You don't need to lie, and you also need courage. And this is the most important part and the heart of the story, especially in the case of women. There are certain attributes that are tied to successful entrepreneurs, not only social, also commercial. So to run your own business, one of the things that you need to be is a risk lover, not risk averse. So you need to be willing to take risks, to expose yourself. And usually, the risk loving or the people that are willing or able to take risk have something called self-efficacy. Do you know what self-efficacy is? What do you think it is? Self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is the subjective belief, so it's not reality, it's just a subjective belief that you can get things done, that good things are going to happen, and that you are going to make them happen. So you have a lot of mediocre people that are horrible that have high self-efficacy. They just believe on themselves. You haven't seen these people that are extremely proud, and I'm not going to name any president in particular, but you actually, it's again, a perception. In different tests, women test a lot lower on self-efficacy than men. And there is even something called imposter syndrome. Do you know what imposter syndrome is? Sheryl Sandberg, for example, one time comment, she had it. So very accomplished women that are CEOs, CFOs, very hard positions, that have done really well in life, and they believe that they're not good enough and they're cheating people, and that somebody's going to find that somehow. You know that even though you're doing fine, everything that is fine, you were lucky, or somehow they're not realizing that you're not good, and it comes with a lot of perfectionism. Nothing that you do is good enough. You know? So what is interesting about self-efficacy is that it's not in your DNA. It's not something you're born and you cannot get it. It's something you build. How do you think you build self-efficacy? I'm not going to tell you. Yes, I will tell you, but taking risk. And why will that help you to build self-efficacy? Why?
Well, because it builds courage
Mm-hmm.
and self-belief.
Mm-hmm.
So it increases, I think, the level of belief in yourself.
The idea is when you start being less risk averse and you take risks, some things will not go right, but others will. And the little things that you achieve really start to say, okay, I didn't die on this one, or I didn't go bankrupt, or they didn't think I was stupid, or my idea was heard, or all that builds up your confidence and your self-efficacy. I do an exercise in one of my classes on entrepreneurship and innovation. I give my students the equivalent to $10, and I ask them to do in 1 week a social business. And I grade them on profit, not on impact. So the one that makes more money will have the highest grade. And I do a survey before and I do a survey after. Almost every team makes money, because from 10 to make 20 or $30 or 50 or 100, think how many friends you have on Facebook. You say, Vanina gave me a project, please buy this crappy stuff. No, so in general they make money. But from the 7 years that I've been doing this, I have 7 businesses. It's not one per year. The last 2 years I didn't have anybody. But I had 7 businesses that are still running for a stupid project in class. But what do I see? The projects, in most cases, in the projects that are successful, when I test self-efficacy of my male students, is almost the same before the experiment and after the experiment. While when we do it with women and they go out and make money, get the business, the projects that work relatively fine, self-efficacy almost overshoots. So having small wins, even if it is a week in a stupid project in class, really builds confidence. So working on that self-belief that you can do it, and there are women that say, fake it until you make it, you know, just go and try to do it, works. The other thing that you need is grit and resilience. If you can read on grit, please go and do, men or female. It's a very important characteristic of success in general. It's people that do not give up and that have a long-term view. And even though you have problems, you keep going and you keep getting better. And resilience is something, again, that you are not born with. It's something that you build when you have problems, when you have heartache, when you've been through life that is not an easy life. I've been relatively lucky in my life. I have now a shoulder tendinitis, I don't know how you say, that is actually pinching a nerve, and I feel like the world is finishing. So probably my resilience is not really good. But the idea of resilience is, even though things bad can be happening to you, you have a positive outtake. People that survive the Holocaust, or people that survive a flood and lost family or went through deep crisis, this is how this concept came about. Our countries have put us with a little bit of trouble, so some resilience we need to have in general as family, as people, and as women. So these characteristics really make an important part of becoming a social entrepreneur. So I don't know if you've seen the movie. Do you know what is heart? No, heart is not here. Heart, brains, and courage. No. Will you be leading like Dorothy, the social entrepreneurship revolution? Are you willing to do that? Are you able to do that? So what I want to do now for a couple of minutes, and then we go to some examples, is you stated problems. Now you know what social entrepreneurship is. Now you know the characteristics. I want you to talk to the people on the table and share with them the problems you had, and see if you have any common problems on the table or any problem that calls your attention especially. And I want you to think which of the problems mentioned can be solved with a social business. And the other step that I want you to think is, can you, with the people in the table, actually start that business or not? So I'll give you 5-7 minutes, and then we'll open up and we share the problems. And then we're going to talk about what is a good problem and what is not. Not all problems can be solved with businesses. But let's try to see if we can find what kind of problems are good. So talk to the people on your table. Choose one from all the problems you have that you think can be solved through business. So let's start seeing there in the back. Let's start with your problems, or the problem you chose. If you want, stand up and thank you.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I'm working with the problem of children abuse and neglect.
Okay.
And so we choose the same problem.
Okay.
We decided to start an education program for parents because in Ukraine we have a program for mothers who are pregnant and for fathers. But we don't have a lot of such programs for parents who already have children. So we decided to start this program, and we will have a part of places for free for families who couldn't allow them to pay for this program, or it could also be a small program, maybe for one day or for a few hours. And also we will have a big program, maybe for a few months, for parents. So we hope that this training will allow to change attention.
Who will pay for that?
Parents who will attend this
If
training.
you are a parent that abuses children, do you think you're aware to pay for that? That you're
Sorry, could you
if
repeat?
you talked. What was the problem?
What was this problem? Children abuse.
Abuse children. So if you're an abuser, are you
Yes.
going to pay for that?
Yes, sometimes it is, because yes, of course, if you talk about sexual abuse, maybe no. But if we are talking about physical or physical abuse, for example, sometimes parents doesn't know what to do, how to communicate with their children.
But that will kind of. Is there a way that you can get people sent to your program, for example?
We could make some agreements with governments.
With courts or a mandatory course
Yes.
if they develop things?
To take a place of social service, but it's not so easy in Ukraine now, because we only increase the sphere of social services from NGO and from corporate service, because now we have social service only by government.
So how would you, any of you is a social worker or an educator, a teacher? In the description you made, anybody is a social worker, a teacher?
Sorry, where? Where? In our group?
Yes.
I work in this sphere.
Okay, so we
With
have
children
one.
ombudsman, so I work with SAM of children abuse and neglect.
Okay, good. Because the question is why you and not others? Can you do this, or is just something you feel is a problem, but when you have to implement it and execute it, do you have the tools to do it? Anybody else can help you there with something that you don't have and they have?
No.
Anybody with business skills, for example? Communication skills? Any of you? Contact,
what is
family
question
or friends?
for-
Well, the question is, you have a problem, you have a business idea.
Yes.
If you had to execute it, do you have the qualifications that are needed for that? And it's not just you, your table. I'm not
okay.
personalizing. In English, you is plural and singular. So if you're going to create this kind of institute, I don't know, or how to call it, no, or organization, and what resources do you need around that? Do you have them on the table? So they ask you to get on resources on the table.
I think we could find these resources. We could take some grants from international organization to start this program, or maybe adopt some other organization or international experience, or maybe take some credit.
Okay, good, interesting. We'll go back, but
Thank
it
you.
sounds okay. Yes.
Hello everyone. Well, I'm presenting our group. It doesn't have a name yet, but if we talk about problem, there was one common problem that we have found it, and it's all about the stress. I think everybody knows that stress, well, that we live in stress 24 hours a day, and we have a huge problem, the lack of sleep. So we are trying to investigate this problem and think about the possible solutions.
I'll be a customer.
You'll be
This is
first.
stress and I'm sleeping badly.
I like
So
it.
you already have somebody here.
Then I'm searching for investors already.
I said customer. She's going to get money from me. Okay, yes.
As you know, I'm not sure whether it is Norway or Netherlands, but I heard that there is already a group of people, I think as I heard, about 300 people that are, it's a trial of new ID, where ID is in chip under your skin. And we thought that we can combine these solutions for identification and also lack of sleep in that way that
So Fitbit is not enough for you.
What?
Fitbit, I don't know, I had it, but now with my arm I took it out. You don't use Fitbit? Nobody Fitbit here? Okay. Because they track your sleep.
No, it's not enough, because the chip would be able, well, it will have few functions, and it will be able to detect the level of hormones, to detect the level of endorphins, also, well, literally say it will detect the level of sleep, whether you slept enough or you didn't slept enough. And then when it will detect all this level of different hormones in your life, it could give you a signal to show that you need, for example, a 1-day rest when you're at work, or you're about to, to get your immune system really low. That means that you can get any disease.
Okay.
Sorry. And this will help us all to have this accurate accurate information about the level of different hormones.
Very interesting. Your case has something that is a problem that many people share: stress, lack of sleep, and you have an IT solution that now a lot of the funding is coming. If you can get big data and you can get health, and you're including health. What is interesting now? Any IT person, any doctor on the table, anybody that knows anything about
from
this,
finance.
If this is realistic, if you can do that with a chip, or a chip is just Black Mirror story, or anybody on the table?
Do you want to talk?
Good. Are you intimidated by all these women?
And this also will be a payment, the way of payment.
Anybody a specialist on privacy issues? Anybody? Yeah. If you're interested on how you keep your personal data, there's now the Internet of Me, rather the Internet of Things, and it's called DigiMe. They're doing a test in Iceland. I was in Reykjavik, and it's very interesting on how because we're leaving a trace on everything we do, and this is for health, but they're trying to see how can we keep all our data and actually monetize it if we actually want it. So there are people that are working on that area, on owning your data and maybe using it for purpose. I don't know if it is getting a chip inside you, but there are ways with your health data, with your personal data, with a lot of other things that you can do. Okay,
Thank you.
Let's work here. Thank you.
So we are going to cover 2 social problems.
Okay, ambitious.
And internationally. And basically, this is a sort of a teaser to start. It all starts here in Ukraine because we understand that what we need now is to learn English.
Okay.
First. Second,
our poor translator is going to lose his job. It's very nice.
Sorry for that. We have here, in our group, we have an IT guy, Sasha.
Okay.
He has a business, IT business, so we'll create a platform, an educational platform, and we'll provide those who want to learn English with this service, basically.
Why is that social? What's the problem?
This is the trick. So this is, say, the business model. Everybody who has, a willing and who can pay for themselves, they pay for themselves. Then we have another social group, orphans, here in Ukraine. We do understand that first, they lack socialization, and second, they lack the good quality of knowledge.
Okay.
This is the one social group of our business model. Another one, just imagine.
And what are you doing with those poor orphans?
Just imagine retired people somewhere in Great Britain.
What? I'm lost. What's the relationship between the platform for English and the orphans?
Yes, just a second.
Okay.
So there are retired people in Great Britain, for instance. They also lack socialization.
Okay.
And they are willing to, to give for free 2 or 3 hours of their English, just again for the sake of socialization.
Okay.
And they teach people from Ukraine, for instance, English, being there. So we cover this problem.
Adopt a Ukrainian.
Yes. And then we cover another problem, because those people who pay, for instance, I can pay just for these classes with the retired person from the UK, I can pay for myself, I can afford it. But the money which the platform gets from me, they go to cover the necessity or the need of this orphan somewhere from, from Mariupol, for instance.
Interesting. There are a lot of social business that actually use that one for one. If you think the most famous is what? Tom's shoes, that you buy that ugly shoe and they give one to poor kids in India and in Latin America. And it's $1 billion company, so it works. Good.
Just because we don't want to get, like donations from others. We don't want to get.
You are donating anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we want to just explain people that they have to pay for themselves.
Okay.
And I mean to work.
But
in
you
this
are donating to the orphans.
Yeah, but we're gonna invest this money in this orphans' education.
Okay. Good. Table here. Hello.
Unfortunately, we don't have such a well-packed idea.
That's okay.
Yeah, we were just discussing what is the main goal of social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And we were talking about that this should be a niche in our understanding. This should be a niche, obviously.
There should be a niche, is she saying. Good.
Yeah, this should be a niche. This should be something not covered by business, because
already.
It's out of their interest,
or
because it doesn't provide such...
not covered by business, or can be covered poorly and doing
yeah,
a bad job, or with a lot of intermediation, or too expensive. Okay.
And not covered by the government.
Okay, and not
because
covered.
the social mission, it's one of the main functions of the government.
Yes.
And that's why we were thinking about how to find this kind of niche, which is not interested for the...
What did you find? We had the introduction.
We were talking about the huge amount of people that have been replaced from eastern Ukraine, from Vinnytsia region, due to the recent explosion. We were talking about this huge amount of people
displaced
that are simply lost because nobody takes care of them. They have no job, no exact place to live.
And what kind of business you can do with that?
We were talking about some kind of small companies allowing to gather these people and helping them to produce some kind of product. It should be just a small thing, but allowing to earn necessary money, some money just necessary to live.
Okay, so we'll get back, but it is possible. There are a lot of businesses that use in their value chain different type of excluded people. Yes, let's try to see here. And I rush, so I show you a little bit examples that hopefully will inspire you. Yes.
In our group, we have an idea for social business. We want to build housing for people who don't have enough money for this. So actually, what the business idea is all about is that people cannot purchase land or build a house, but when they cooperate, when they involve themselves in cooperatives, then probably it's going to be more beneficial, and this can work. Or maybe richer people will invest the money into this, and for poorer people they have preferential conditions for this. But amongst our group, we don't have a business plan yet.
Or works in the construction.
У мене сестра працює у сфері нерухомості.
My sister works in real estate in the land registry, so we're gonna get in touch with her.
Next one. Yes. Oh.
Well, our project is a little bit similar to this group's one, but we have to underline the problems may not only face the people who were displaced, but in Ukraine it's difficult to feel safe. We work here, we make money, but at the same time very few people have an opportunity to have enough funds for emergency, to have, so to say, in case something happens wrongly, we go poor, we go flat broke. It would be good to have an organization that gives money not just as a bank, but also gives you an opportunity to have legal advice, or maybe healthcare advice, or maybe just share information. As for the funding, there are several sources possible. Actually, the people who received aid from this fund, they can actually repay the money donated, and because this person has certain qualities, you can actually repay it by your professional involvement or conduct training. For instance, an accountant can train other accountants for students or listeners. Plus, some of the companies now want to raise their prestige. That's why they pay a lot of attention to social responsibility. So by funding such organizations, they can tick the box, yes, we're doing a good job and we are impartial. And plus, you can also expect some allowances from the state.
There's one that could go in that area. So good, interesting. Yes, last but not least, and then we go to the examples, yes?
Okay. For dessert, we've had a long discussion about many things. We try to understand what social entrepreneurship is about. Then we were thinking about problems we might tackle. What's the most painful for us? Many things are painful. But anyways, we decided that we don't feel comfortable because there are a lot of cars in the city of Kiev. There are parking lots, but nobody parks there because they are expensive. Sometimes they park the cars wrongly, so we decided to make up a social project, and make multi-story parkings or underground parking lots, because this is going to bring a lot of benefit for the society. Then we were thinking, okay, what you were telling us before about courage, heart, and brain. This is what we were missing. The brain was not there. We have enough courage, we have big hearts, and we have 3 lawyers on our team, so the legal support is already there. The remaining colleagues yet haven't decided what kind of area they will actually involve themselves in, but I think this is a very, very hot problem with parking.
For example, for parking, that is not just building a parking, but I think, for example, like Airbnb, where you can go for a vacation at a house of somebody. If you take your car and your parking space is free, open all day, and you go to your job and park somewhere else, you can rent out for that moment to people that work in that neighborhood. There's a parking sharing. There are also car sharing things that you cannot use your car and just get a park, and those parking. So there are some interesting cases. I didn't bring an example for that, but there are. But let me give you some examples of what is a good business, what is a good social problem to actually do a business. Let me share some stories that I hope could inspire you. One is Lisa Curtis, and the project is called Kuli Kuli Foods. I just chose her because I know the name, I like the name Kuli Kuli, because there are tons of different ones. And she actually served in the Peace Corps as a volunteer in Niger. She's a vegetarian, and when she was in the Peace Corps, she was worried that she was going to have malnutrition. She found a superfood, a tree that had a fruit that was actually superfood, that it was going to help her nutrition. She ate that during the time, and she came back without any trouble on nutrition. So she created like a cereal bar with this superfood, and it's sold in the US and in Europe for a premium. And she works with women, local farmers in Niger, and she helps to monetize and to actually make a better living. Like this, you have quinoa from Peru, you have baobab fruits, you could have berries from Ukraine. There are many that you could do in this area and work with different disadvantaged groups. There's the next two are 2 platforms that actually took advantage of that is a market very inefficient, where there are many intermediaries. One is for artisanal products, like those beautiful shirts, for example, Ukrainian shirts that probably the women that are doing the embroidery do not get a dime, and when it gets to be sold, it's a lot more expensive. So what they're doing is selling directly with an e-platform, directly from the artisanal side to the premium markets that pay higher, and they also put the story that actually makes people want to. And the next one is the same idea of the platform, but for young designers in Africa, fashion designers. Like this, there are many platforms right now that actually unite demand and supply, and you can find it for teas, for natural products, etc., that work very well. It's not moving. Why is not moving? Now it's moving. The next one is Solar Sister. Catherine Lucy, she actually did work 20 years as an investment banker on the energy sector. And she decided she was tired of the energy sector, but she knew how to get funding for that sector because she was actually the one giving the financing. So she decided to start Solar Sister to eradicate poverty in energy in Africa. She worked with women that will take solar panels and solar lamps in different communities in Africa, and she actually knew how to get the funding and work on the energy sector. Elvest, and that could be not the same but similar to a project you were telling. This is Sally Krochek. She was actually the CEO of Citigroup in New York. Very powerful finance women. She created also a platform that called Elvest. It's investment for women, where women can set up their own profile, say, okay, I want to have 2 children, I want them to go to college, I want to retire when I'm 41. I'm just kidding, I'm more than that. But like all the things that you want in life, and they're going to tell you how you do that. And even there's a part that say, I want to compensate for a wage gap. You know that we women earn 17 to 20% less, so this is how I can make that money with investments. So, and this is she just got a huge round of funding and it's working very well. I can pass you the links if you want to check them later on. Carol Fishman-Cohen, I actually know her. She was a mom. She was a Harvard graduate, sorry. She went on maternity leave, and the company she was working went bankrupt. So somehow in half of her maternity leave, she decided, okay, since I don't have a job, I better have another kid. She had 2. And those 2 years became 6 years. And she decided to go back into the job market, and she couldn't find a job. And she said, I'm a Harvard graduate, why am I not finding a job? It took her almost 2 years to find a job. So she wrote a book after she found the job of what it took for her to change from those gap years. It became a bestseller, and she had so many emails and letters, and that she realized that it was a service that it was needed. And she created eRelaunch. There are podcasts, there are training, and actually she has she works with PricewaterhouseCoopers, with Ernst & Young, and she has internship for women above 40 years. So and I recommend you to read Irina Rubis, a Ukrainian person. She didn't create actually, she is now the owner of the Economica Communication Hub. She also had kids, and the moment she had kids, she won a temporary job, and she started working as an editor in a company because of the flexibility. At a certain time, the company was going bank, it was not doing fine, and they were going to close it. So she convinced the CEO at the time not to close it, to give her 3 months to do whatever she could to solve the problems. She actually did, and the company started working better, so they named her CEO. After she was the CEO, after 2 years, she did a management takeover, and she actually bought the company from a very well-known Ukrainian rich person that I don't know where it is, but it's there. And she has 4 platforms or 4 different businesses tied to communications. But the one that I found that it was interesting and I want to share with you is WOMO. That is a community of working mothers, and there are all types of articles about how and resources on how to harmonize life and work. So she works with a lot of women on how to do that. Vania Macias is a Peruvian dancer that I know very well. She is a dancer, classical dancer. She went to New York and she was trained in hip hop. She comes from a well-off family in Peru. When she came back from New York, she saw a lot of kids in the street dancing, asking for money. and she decided to create a school. She created a school for rich people that could pay. Some of you have done this type of things. And she created also the school for the underprivileged kids that couldn't pay. So she would train these adolescents to become professional trainers, and she would bring very famous Ukrainian, Russian, American choreographers to teach the richer kids, and then they would go and teach for free or subsidized in the other school. Most of their kids end up being teachers or in companies in New York, in Europe, very successful program. Mariana Soka, she's actually also from Ukraine. She's a social worker. She always was worried about homelessness and about the perception that homeless had with people. She created a magazine that could be sold by homeless in order to be able to make a living and help them to do the transition to have a housing. She actually has two partners. One is a photographer, another is a writer. She convinced a lot of well-known writers and photographers, and it has a magazine that is extremely high quality. So it's not a printed thing that you get in the supermarket. It's a high quality magazine in order to change perceptions. Cara Jessup has a brother that has Down syndrome, and she was an IT student. She started programming games for her brother to improve his learning and how he could adapt to society. And a lot of the parents of other Down syndrome that she knew started asking for the games because of the good results. She realized that there was a market. Now she has a company called Innate Playing that makes all kinds of games, educational games for Down syndrome. She fighter. I know her, I work with her in UNCTAD. Halil Khalifa, she suffered violence as a young person in the Middle East country, actually Lebanon. She's a trainer, a self-defense trainer. She created a place for women to learn self-defense, and also with a lot of empowerment courses to build confidence, to build self-efficacy, etc. She has now replicated in other countries in the Middle East. More than 30,000 women have been trained. Andiamo, Samia Pervez, she has a kid with cerebral palsy and that is quadriplegic, and she needed orthetics for the kid to actually be able to function and move, and it would take 28 weeks to get anything that she needed. She got very frustrated. She ended up buying a 3D scanning and a 3D printer. She associated with a couple of engineers that were friends and a physician. She created a company, and now they print their own orthetics in 48 hours. And they extended this to other kids. Sabrije Temberken, she's a German woman that is blind. She studied translation and translated from Tibetan, created in Braille, translated Tibetan to Braille. She realized the power of independence that it gave her, the education, and how she could actually make it and have their own things by translating, and created a school for disabled young adults and also people that were excluded from society. So she works with albinos from Africa that are discriminated, and she has a school in India that anybody can apply, and they have to send a business proposal because they help them to be entrepreneurs. They put them through hell and all the discrimination they're going to face. They have to pay for themselves to make it to the school once they're approved, but once they're there, they're completely funded and until they get their own business. And check the page, amazingly inspiring. Ting-Si and Lauren, one is an IT person, the other is a person specialized in nutrition in the US, and they work together to actually match up a business solution for farmers with, oops, I went to the other side. What do all these women have in common? And we're almost finishing. What all these women have in common? What do all these problems have in common? Why we can call this a successful social problem? What do they have in common? And think if your problems have it. What do you think?
They have a passion.
Sorry?
They have a passion for this problem.
They have a passion and a very personal investment on the problem. It's something that they care dearly. If you have a kid with cerebral palsy, there is no way you're not going to find the solution. It's not just something that you care about, it's something that you need to do for yourself. So, or you care a lot about dancing or about certain things. What else? It's not just only about the passion. What else do they have?
They start with why, I think.
Mm-hmm.
They address some social problems and they find a solution based on what they do.
They started in one cases with their kids, sometimes could be a small, so you're able to prototype. So you have a niche market, as you were saying, very well defined, and you can prototype the solution, and you actually were able to do that. What else? After you did that, you solve your problem and you solve your 5 little neighbors or friends, what happened? You can scale it up. So it's not only that you can prototype it small, but it has the possibility to scale up. So the first part is you solve real problems of real people. Very specific, real problems of real people. Next, very well-defined niche market. It's not a flu thing, it's not all poor people. No, you have to define it. Then you prototype, you start small, you check what you need with the solution, you make mistakes, you improve it, but with the possibility of scaling up. What's the next? It's not about having a great idea. It's not discussing 5 hours and something is going to pop up into your head and you're going to say, Eureka, this is it. No, it's about the capacity that you have of mobilizing resources, your human capital, to solve the problem. This is what I asked you. Do you have it on the table? So I can care about poverty in Niger, never been there, don't know anybody. I don't even know if there's really a problem. So really things that you know, that you can mobilize, that you have the assets. It's hard enough to do it even if you have the assets. If you don't, it's almost impossible. So, and last but not least, it's not to think that I'm going to do a good thing. I'm going to donate shoes. I'm going to donate this. I'm going to do that. It's just to think about impact. If I donate those shoes, what's going to happen? For example, Tom Shoes, and I told you it's a $1 billion company, there's just appeared a report, they have no impact. So they're doing a good thing. They're donating shoes. We're all buying Tom Shoes, and we're very hipster with those ugly shoes that actually came from Argentina, because we are donating. They went to India, they tested, and they tested 3 things. One, they did not give shoes to a group. To the other group, they gave cash, and to the third group, they gave the Tom Shoes. No difference in school performance, no difference in education. The good news is that the group that received Tom Shoes, at least they were worried that that was destroying the national industry of shoes, because they were receiving the Tom Shoes and not buying local. Even that didn't happen. There was no difference between if you gave cash and the kids actually bought the shoes they needed and not the crappy Tom Shoes. So they are now working actually with people that I know, because they really wanted to make an impact. They thought they were doing something good. One thing is thinking you're doing good, another is measuring impact and making sure that you're getting the results that you want. Last but not least is the power of collaboration. You don't work on your own, you don't do those things alone. You look people that complement your education, you do people that complement your assets, you work with government, with NGOs, many of you talked about this, and you try to find a way, you build an ecosystem in Ukraine to support different social entrepreneurs and to multiply the effect. So just with this finish, and I hope these ideas have inspired you to think about social problems in a different way, and to think, especially what I want you to get, hopefully from this session, is to think about who you are and what passion you have and what can you bring about in this area. So thank you very much. You have my email, and you can contact me anytime, and I would love if you have an idea to help you.
Vanina, thanks a lot for coming to us today and for spending this more than an hour, for telling us about social entrepreneurship and just for sharing really cool, interesting and exciting stories of successful women. I do hope you also liked the participation and the questions of our audience, and we have a small present for you.
Thank you.
So thanks once again, and come to us more with interesting topics, and just having such kind of events is really cool.
Thank you so much, everybody, and I hope you can solve the problems you presented.